Well, we appreciate it. I don't know what's going on. Again, as I said, it's very, very slow. So I don't know if it's on my end or on, your end, Deputy Borough President. So hopefully we can, get that together. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see if it continues.
Okay.
All righty. Our council representatives from Councilwoman Ayala's office.
Hi, this is Jose Rodriguez, Chief of Staff to Councilmember Diana Ayala.
Hi.
Councilmember Riley.
Good morning. This is Simone Jones, Chief of Staff to Councilmember Riley. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Councilmember Joing. Councilmember Cabrera. Councilmember Gibson.
Good morning, everybody. This is Ishma Hari Prasad from Councilmember Gibson's office. I'm sorry, I'm also having some troubles with Webex this morning.
I apologize on behalf of Webex. Member Salamanca.
Good morning, everyone. This is Shannon Knott, Deputy Chief of Staff for Councilmember Salamanca.
And Councilmember Diaz Sr. Okay. So thank you, everyone. Marisol, I'm just checking in again. Or do we have the?
Yes. You also have Gregory Faulkner for Cabrera's office.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have quorum members.
Thank you. So our first agenda item is a text amendment, zoning for coastal flooding resiliency. Actually not last month, but November, city planning initially presented, and they're here today requesting a vote on the text amendment. We're going to hear briefly from them to refresh our memories. This will be a voting item by members of the Borough Board, which consists of the 12 chairs and the Bronx City Council delegation or their reps. And to our next presenter on behalf or for the City Department of Planning is James Harris, and he's the intergovernmental liaison. So I know Mr. Harris is here.
Hi there. Actually, it's going to be Christine Camilleri who's going to speak on behalf of City Planning.
Well, that's impossible. Nobody told me that. It's over.
Thank you.
Just a little levity. We'll roll with the punches here today, but I'm sure we're going to have a great presentation from the City Department of Planning.
Thank you so much to you both for that introduction. Just want to first confirm everyone can hear me okay. If I could just get a thumbs up. Fabulous. Thank you. And I appreciate that kind of invitation to roll with the punches. I think we've all gotten pretty used to that, and appreciate being able to speak with you all and be with you all this morning. Zoning for coastal, and I want to kind of start just by mentioning I am joined by a few of my colleagues on the line. My Bronx office's director, Carol Samuel, Deputy Director Sean Brady, and Manuela Pawadaico from our zoning division, as well as James Harris from Intergovernmental Affairs. And we're here this morning to talk about zoning for coastal flood resiliency, which is a proposal that is the result of nearly a decade of outreach and research that DCP began immediately following Hurricane Sandy. In 2012, and it's a proposal I think that many of you have heard quite a bit about at this point. Since first being established as a temporary emergency text amendment in 2013, the citywide text amendment has been refined over the years with input directly from communities in the floodplain and in coordination with our partner city agencies. And to recap what this proposal is about, these provisions look to better protect all of us facing the reality of climate change. And really specifically, it looks to ensure that our current and future flood-prone building stock can be better equipped to handle future flood risk. ZCFR, which is the also catchy acronym that we use to describe this proposal, was shaped by the very real lessons learned on the ground with directly working with impacted communities after Hurricane Sandy. It was furthered by analysis of resilient construction practices in the floodplain. And so the final proposal, which is before you today, intends to improve upon the temporary resiliency measures that have already been implemented and making them permanent. And the idea is to do this in order to promote long-term resiliency across the city and to help support post-disaster recovery. I'll note that ZCFR, this proposal, is really just one strategy that is part of a wider range of efforts across the city that look at resiliency from different scales, not just the building scale, to increase the city's resilience to future storm surges and coastal flooding. This specific proposal looks to do that through updates to the zoning resolution. And so at this point, in addition to the November presentation we gave to this body, the majority of your boards have received individual presentations about the proposal, and a large number have provided recommendations. I want to express a huge and sincere thank you to all of you for your hard work, for engaging with us, for sharing your local insights and providing feedback over the years. And so I'm here today with my colleagues to help answer any outstanding questions you may have about this proposal in advance of the vote. And so we'll welcome those questions at this time.
Thank you for that presentation. And I will just ask if there are any questions at this time. Chris, you're going to be able to see hands. So if you can just raise your hand virtually. And so you can do that by *9 if you're on the phone, and going into the settings and chat. Wait, let me try it. Yeah, you go into your one of the buttons on the bottom, and you can raise your hand, and then we'll acknowledge you. And see, Community Board 11 has arrived.
Yeah, and just one more quick note, that raising hand function applies whether you're a panelist or an attendee. So, if there's anybody who we've missed from the board. Jeremy Warnicki, I see your hand up. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry, my video's not, if I do my video, I'll probably crash on me. Yeah, I had to call my chairman. So the question I had is, so Christine, you sent me a map for my district, and I'm just trying to make sense of it. The proposal is what we're looking at doing, right? And the red areas would become added.
That's exactly right. And so just to describe, and I'll just mention, we did discuss this proposal with Community Board 11, talk through this, but it's a lot to absorb. And so essentially the way the regulations apply today, the emergency rules in the zoning resolution that were passed after Hurricane Sandy is in the 1% annual chance floodplain, which is FEMA's designated by FEMA and considered kind of the area most expected to flood in the event of a serious storm. In that area, we have additional flexibility provided through zoning, through things like allowing for additional height, providing setback relief, just to name a few. And what those provisions do is they make sure that zoning isn't standing in the way of someone proactively making retrofits to a building to make it more flood resistant, or if they are just trying to comply with the building code, which reflects federal floodplain regulations. And so what we are looking to do as part of this proposal is make that same level of flexibility available in also the 0.2% annual chance floodplain, which is the an area that doesn't quite face as high a risk as the 1%, but it does still face a moderate risk of flooding. And so what you're talking about, Jeremy, is I think the color coding that's used on those maps, just to show the difference between those areas. But what you're looking at for Board 11 is that red area would be the expansion area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but yes, I would think it, but from what you described to me, it sounds like there's actually more flexibility for somebody to do what they want than maybe being more of a problem for them. Did I hear it correctly?
That's correct. That's correct. These are optional provisions, and so they're not actually required it's just about expanding where they're available. Does that make sense?
So in terms of like maybe more relief or assistance, they could apply for like a FEMA grant? Is it?
Yeah, so nothing is mandatory, in that red area, what we call the expansion area. It makes it so it's easier. Say, I'll give a more concrete example. For instance, if a building wanted to, to raise their mechanical equipment, for instance, onto an open area, they would be able to do that and not be in conflict with zoning. For example, just to give an example, so it's the provisions just apply just a little additional relief, because what we realized in 2013, the rules that were adopted on a temporary basis, is we didn't provide quite enough relief to help folks deal with kind of the obstacles that zoning was placing, restrictions to help overcome those. So we've, based on outreach, what we've heard from people kind of going through the reconstruction process, and what we've learned through our own research, and even talking to folks like architects, have learned the ways in which really that 2013 text, which is what we still have on the books today, the ways it fell short. And so we're looking to go above and beyond that, to provide additional relief and think more proactively.
So my concern with that is, it's like, it's convenient. It looks like the red zones are conveniently put where there are proposed homeless shelters for my district, but not the surrounding areas. I just find that suspicious. That's just a comment. You don't have to respond, but I think that clarifies everything. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, it does give more relief for all building types, but I appreciate the comment.
All right, I don't see any other hands raised at the moment. I did want to mention, I know we've had a couple Webex glitches, and thank you everybody for being patient with that. I know Carol from planning was someone who had wanted to speak. Christine, I can unmute her line if necessary.
Sure, I can't see that on my end, so appreciate you flagging that.
Yeah, Carol, thank you for bearing with us. I just unmuted your phone. If you had anything that you wanted to add, you can do that here.
Hi, yes, good morning. Thank you. I just want to, again, just reiterate our thanks for everyone for the hard work that everyone has put into this. We've been talking with the boards for more than 2 years, and these are really important regulations. The boards that are deeply affected have been very good partners in this, and just want to thank everyone for that.
All right, thank you. Deputy, I still don't see any other hands raised at this time.
Okay, that's great. That means everything's been covered, or at least that's what I think it means. That's what we're going to go with. and we can move to the voting portion. And I think what I'll do is we'll go similar to the roll call. We'll do a community board by community board and rep vote. I'll call and the board, and then I'll give you a moment to unmute yourself and make your vote. And this is yay or nay, as per usual on a vote. And community board 1. I hear something from Ms. Laura, but I don't hear exactly what that is. So is it possible to put your vote in the chat? That would be helpful.
Deputy Hoory, I know we had somebody here from the board. Which name are we looking to get to speak?
Alter. I don't okay, so just a reminder, we're doing community board chairs and council member reps, and I did not hear I didn't hear community board 1. So community board 1, put your vote in the chat, and we're going to move on to community board 2.
Community board 2 votes yay.
Thank you. Community board 3.
Madam Chair, I'd like to explain my vote.
Okay.
I vote to abstain for 2 reasons. We received guidance from the New York City Department of Planning that Community Board 3 was in the 0.2% flood plan, and therefore we are virtually unaffected from the standpoint of flood impact topographically. And secondly, we did not entertain or host a public hearing because of this guidance, and that it was a non-ULURP item that did not require action by the board or our recommendation. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for that explanation. We always appreciate clarity on a vote. Thank you again. And where are we? Community board 4.
Albert Carmenda's yes. Community board 4.
Thank you very much. Community board 5.
Belinda Lawrence, yes.
Thank you. Community board 6.
One second, Deputy.
Hello?
Yep, CB6, you're good.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Community board 6, your vote, please.
Yes, Yvonne Capers, yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Community board 7.
This is Manuel. Community board 7 votes yay.
Thank you. Community board 8.
Nay.
Thank you. Community board 9.
Mohammed Majumdar, first vice chair, yes.
Thank you. Community board 10.
Community board 10 votes yes.
Thank you. Community board 11.
Like I said, my chairman's not here today, so he obviously can't vote.
Okay, thank you very much. Community board 12.
Madam Deputy Borough President, Community Board 12 votes in the affirmative.
Thank you. I always appreciate formality from community boards, so thank you. And council member rep for council member Ayala.
Madam Deputy, I abstain.
Thank you. Community board, District 12, council member Riley.
Madam Deputy, the councilman abstains.
Thank you. Councilmember Joing. Councilmember Cabrera.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Gibson.
Councilmember Gibson votes yay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Salamanca.
Abstained on behalf of Councilmember Salamanca.
Thank you. Councilmember Ruben Diaz Sr. Thank you. Thank you all for your votes. Marisol, what is your tally? Chris, you've got to get a drum roll for your audio repertoire.
I will work on a sound effects board before we have another vote.
We need a soundboard. We need drums. We need applause. Because
So-
we need a laugh track, definitely. Because I'm dying out here. I need a laugh track.
So I have, and we can just get, I think it was, no, I don't think it was 9. Somebody said nay, and I wasn't sure.
That was 8.
Board 8.
8, okay. So that we have 10 yeses, 1 no, and 4 abstentions. So it carries.
Okay. Thank you again. Democracy at work. See, that would have been like you need the drum and then also the laugh track. So our next item on the agenda would be ranked choice voting. And we're going to hear from Eric Friedman, Executive Director from New York City Campaign Finance Board, giving the upcoming elections, and we're going to hear about the new ranked choice voting and its how it will affect upcoming elections and trainings and so forth. And I'm excited. I know everyone else is here. Certainly when there's something new like this is a great place to start with the community boards. So I want to invite Mr. Friedman to begin his presentation.
Thank you so much. I'm Eric Friedman. I'm Assistant Executive Director for Public Affairs at Campaign Finance Board. I have a short, I know you have a few minutes and there's a lot on your agenda today, so I'm going to try to keep it brief. I have a short kind of PowerPoint presentation I'd like to accompany. Chris, if you could just help me get that up. That share button is still grayed out for me. So.
Oh, sorry. Okay, we were focused on a bunch of the other logistics. Do you want it? Can you just email that to me real quick?
I can.
Sorry. Thanks everybody for bearing with us. It's just C. McShane at bronxbp.nyc.gov. It's on our website, so I'm not too worried about extra spam as a result here.
C. McShane at.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Voice.
I thought I was hearing the voice of God.
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that address real quick for me?
Oh, yeah. It's just, I'll drop it in the chat too. It's just at bronxbp.nyc.gov.
bronxbp.nyc.gov.
Yeah.
Perfect. Much appreciated. All right. And so that should be over to you now.
All right, 1 second. Thank you everybody for bearing with us.
Much appreciated.
Narrating as well.
It's a complicated subject and the visuals are helpful. Again, I'll try to keep it brief.
All right. Got it. I'll have it up on the screen here in just a second. All right. Perfect. All right. Just hit play. Good to go. Awesome. So thanks again for inviting me here to speak to the Borough Board. It's my first Borough Board meeting, so I'm excited to be here. Again, I'm Eric Friedman. I'm Assistant Executive Director for Public Affairs at the Campaign Finance Board. I'm going to give you just a brief overview of ranked choice voting and some information about the work that the CFB is doing, outreach we're doing to voters in the Bronx ahead of the special elections that are coming up pretty quickly in March, and hopefully looking forward to opportunities to working with all of you to help get the word out. And if there's time, I'm happy to take questions at the end if there are any questions that folks have. If you could just move ahead to the next. So first, I'll explain who we are and what I'm doing here talking about ranked choice voting. CFB is a nonpartisan independent city agency. We empower New Yorkers to make a greater impact on their elections. We administer the matching funds program for city office, and we do voter engagement to voters all across New York City through our New York NYC Votes initiative. But we have, specific to this discussion, we have a mandate in the charter to conduct voter education and an outreach campaign introducing ranked choice voting to New Yorkers, which we'll be using this year for the first time. If we go advance to the next slide. So most basic question, what is ranked choice voting? We'll, for the purposes of this presentation, we will abbreviate ranked choice voting to RCV. So when you see RCV, you know we're talking about ranked choice voting. Ranked choice is a new way for New York City voters to elect their local representatives. Voters get the opportunity to rank up to 5 candidates in their order of preference instead of just one. So this does a few things. It gives voters more say in who wins. It gives more opportunities for their votes to count. It increases civility between candidates during election time and can lead to more diverse candidates being elected. I'll get a little bit more into detail about these benefits as we get through the presentation. We can move ahead. But just as a little background, how did we get ranked choice voting in New York City? Back in November 2019, the Charter Revision Commission put it on the ballot. Ballot question number 1 in November 2019 was approved by 73.5% of voters across New York City. So it's important to know as we talk about it that this is a reform that was approved by voters across New York City. And if you look at the next slide, I'll just a quick look of how that played out in the Bronx. I said 73.5% of voters voted yes across New York City. Like anything else, those votes were not uniform across the city. But just as you see, certainly it was a reform that had significant support in the borough. Just to note that this map came from. It came to us from the CUNY mapping service at their Center for Urban Research, the graduate center based on those unofficial election results. But you can see, again, significant support among voters in the Bronx for ranked choice voting. So just to kind of talk about how it works, how it will work in New York City is a quick cheat sheet for you. Per the charter revision, it is used for elections starting January 1st, 2021. So we're past that. So moving forward, ranked choice voting is with us. It will only be used in special and primary elections, but not in general elections. Beyond that, it's used only in special and primary elections for the offices of mayor, public advocate, controller, borough president, and city council member, what we generally call city offices. It's not used for any federal offices or state races, and it won't be used in judicial elections. So that last part is actually really important to understand because it means that there are some ballots voters will get that have both ranked choice and single choice elections. In some parts of the city, people, for instance, will be voting this year for members of city council and mayor and all the other borough offices at the same time they're voting for district attorney or some of those judicial races. So voters will see both styles of voting on their ballot. So just moving forward,
Again, all of this makes it, if we go to the next slide, makes it really important to get out and communicate with voters about how this is all going to work. As noted, we've got these special elections on March 23rd here in the Bronx, with 2 members moving on to other offices. Voters will have a chance to elect their replacements in just under 2 months. If we move forward, this is something we're dealing with in a couple places. We've got a couple of special elections, starting with one in Queens. Election day is February 2nd in District 24. We've got a special election in District 31 in February before we get to those elections in the Bronx. And then, sorry, this is all on this next slide. And then we've got, the big election in June is that primary where every city council district is up along with with the borough presidencies and citywide offices. So all New Yorkers registered to a political party with the primary will have the opportunity to cast a ranked choice ballot in June. So taking a look at the next slide, this is an example of what those ballots will look like. This is for that Council District 24 special election in Queens. I know petitioning is still ongoing for those special elections here in the Bronx, so we don't have sample ballots for those races just yet. But this is what the ballot will look like. You'll see the column of candidates down there on the left, along with those 5 columns that gives voters the opportunity to rank their choices 1 through 5. Voters will still have the opportunity, you can see there on that last line, to write in a name if they so desire. It's important to understand, candidates still voters still may vote for one candidate if that's the way they prefer to vote. But you see here, I think it's a pretty clear and simple outline of how voters fill out that ballot. We have some graphics coming up that explain it in a little bit further detail. But just to explain how that outreach will look. So we've been mailing. We have mailings planned to voters in all of those districts with a special election. So for Council District 11, as of the middle of last year, about 87,000 voters. A little fewer in District 15, more than 78,000. But every registered voter in those districts will receive a mailing from us in advance of those special elections. And on that next slide, you can see what those will look like. We worked with an organization called the Center for Civic Design, which really, they're great and know a lot about kind of, they've helped roll out ranked choice voting in jurisdictions around the country. They did a series of usability. They did some usability research with voters here in New York City, focused really exclusively on voters of color, voters with limited English, to help us ensure that these communities, these communications would be as clear as possible. So you can see here just kind of some of that really basic information, a layout of what the ballot will look like, a quick 3-step process to casting that ballot that will count. And with in some of those pitfalls for voters to look out for. Don't vote for, it does not help to vote for a candidate more than once. That could invalidate your ballot. Do not give the same ranking to more than one candidate. That could invalidate your ballot. And a quick, very simple picture of what a good, clean ranked choice vote looks like. You can rank up to 5 choices, but remember, still vote for just that one candidate if you prefer. So if you move forward to the other side of that postcard, again, sorry, just the one note is that we worked really hard to make this messaging kind of voter-centric, right? To give voters the clear step-by-step view of what they need to do to cast a ballot that counts. On the flip side of that postcard, we'll have some very basic information about when the election is, and that's on the next slide. When the election is, and when early voting starts and where to go for more information. We understand that, that even beyond the basics, as we started to conduct presentations around the city, voters have a lot of questions. We have a good deal of information on our website, and you can see the address to go there for more information. So again, that's going to go out to voters, everybody who's a registered voter before those elections. But that clearly is not where the outreach ends. That's really just where it starts. If we go to that next slide, we're really excited to be working with you all and with the Borough President's Office to schedule. We'll be scheduling some public sessions to talk directly to voters during February to explain ranked choice voting directly to voters in much more detail. We rely on partners like you to get the word out in your neighborhoods everywhere across New York City. So if you could just advance to the next slide there, Chris, because really it's those folks like you who are kind of on the ground in your neighborhoods that are best equipped to talk to your own communities. We've been working with many of the community boards, really starting in Queens where those first special elections are being held. But we would really love the opportunity to work with you to schedule presentations for your constituents as we get ready for these special elections in March here in the Bronx. All of this, just on this next slide, a huge focus for us is our Train the Trainer sessions. We have been hosting trainings, a couple of trainings every week to train folks to help them better educate voters in their own communities about how ranked choice voting works, help provide people with information they need to answer what those frequently asked questions, and talk about some best practices for educating folks. Because again, it will take a lot of hands to ensure that voters have the information they need to cast their ballots with confidence and make their voices heard. So just on this next slide, there's the address on our website for anyone who wants to sign up to attend one of these really in-depth Train the Trainer sessions. If you don't have that address, we'll make sure that get this presentation out to everybody and make it available for you to refer to later. But we have 2 of those scheduled. They Train the Trainer sessions scheduled every week, one Wednesdays around lunchtime, one Thursday after work hours. But as noted, are more than happy to come work with the community boards to schedule specific presentations to your constituents. On this next slide, again, I'll make sure that these get around. Just some other resources for more in-depth information. Voting.nyc is our general voting information website. You will always find information about ranked choice voting there. We've got in-depth information on our agency website. We've got a social media toolkit for folks who would like to use their social media channels to help get the word out to their followings. And our own channels on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. We put a lot of content out there to help explain ranked choice voting to voters and get them engaged. I will note we are not the only people out there doing this work. I'll give a quick shout out on the next slide to the New York City Board of Elections. They have put together some really good information on ranked choice voting as well. They've got an explainer video up on their website and I think some really good detailed information for voters who use the ballot marking devices about how those will work for ranked choice voting. And with that, I will close. I know folks have a busy agenda today, but I've got my contact information here. You'll also see Ali Swatek, who's our Director of Policy and Research, and she is our real authority on the subject. And so her contact information is there as well. And if you have time, I'm happy to answer any questions if folks have.
Thank you for the presentation. And this is a very, very important topic. So I will open the floor up to questions. Please raise your hand virtually and *6, *9 if you are on the phone to raise your hand. And Chris, do we have any hands up?
All right. So Jeremy, I see his hand is still up. I'm not sure if he left it up previously, but Jeremy, did you have a question for Eric? All right. I'm going to guess no. Ken Brown, your hand is up if you want to unmute your line.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I have two closed questions, please. One is you said that in your sample that there would be space for a write-in. Is a space for a write-in going to be made available for all elections that are eligible as a matter of policy or law? That's one question. And the other question is, you said that there would be space for 5 candidates that you could give your vote. What if there's more than 5 people running?
So those are both great questions. On write-in, I believe that it is my understanding that election law requires the ballot to have a space for write-ins.
Okay.
So that is my understanding. As for the question about the up to 5, so yes, there are a lot of these elections as you see them kind of unfolding. Starting with the mayor's race down to some of these council races where there are more than 5 candidates running, and will likely be more than 5 candidates on the ballot. The way that ranked choice voting works in New York City is that you can rank up to 5 candidates. It certainly gives voters more opportunities than the previous system in which you only had the chance to vote for 1. There was some discussion about this, as the Charter Revision Commission considered it. There are some jurisdictions that rank only 3. I'm not aware of any that rank more than 5. But this was a number that they felt would be consistent and would work well for New York City.
Thank you.
So to be even more clear, if you're only, and I think this would speak to how the votes would eventually be tallied. If you are ranked 6th, 7th, 8th, or anything after 5, then you would be eliminated from the getting any additional votes on the second round, right?
Well, that's not entirely the way it works. Although I think the way you've described it is kind of in practice is how it would work. But so it's done round by round. So the person with the candidate with the least number of votes on that first round is eliminated, and so each of those votes is then moved to the second choice on its ballot, and they are distributed among the other candidates. And so one by one, candidates are kind of eliminated in a similar fashion until there are 2 candidates left, at which point it is clear there will be a winner. There's like the way to think about this that I think has been most helpful for me as I've tried to get my head around it is so each voter still has only 1 vote, right? By ranking more than 1 candidate on your ballot, you have more opportunities for your vote to count, right? If the candidate that you choose, let's say you choose, kind of one of the long shot candidates is your first choice, which you can do. Once that person gets eliminated, your vote moves to your second choice. And so I think it's really helpful, I think, to think about, like, again, because I think as we've presented, I think we've gotten some similar questions as the one you just posed as to how that counting works. And I think the idea, again, of like the 1 person, 1 vote idea, I think is really helpful. Did that address your question, or did I not get it?
It actually did answer the question, but it actually gave me more. But I'm gonna just see if anyone else has any questions.
All right, Emmanuel Martinez, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Chris. So in terms of education, Eric, are us as community board members able to, let's say, partner up directly with you so that you can come on or feature a Zoom meeting to our district directly?
Absolutely.
And how do we go about that?
So if you want to shoot me an email, I think that address is in the presentation. I can leave it in the chat as well, just so you have that. I will connect you with our engagement coordinator. His name is Matt Pitt. He works with community boards across the city, and we'll make that happen. We would love to come talk to the boards and work with you guys to help get information out to the vote.
Perfect. And then my second question is to kind of go off of the deputy borough president. In terms, you mentioned rounds. So I understand the rounds. Are the rounds going to be continuous, one after the other, and we're not going to get notified until the final numbers are it? Or on election day, they're going to say, great, no one received 50% or more. Tomorrow, we're going to go ahead and tally the next round.
That's a great question. And I think, so there's been some discussion this week over how the votes will get counted. But I think without getting too far into the weeds, a lot of this, the rounds and the tabulation are done by a computer, right? And so it's not as though it takes extra time to do those kind of elimination rounds to kind of narrow it down so you have two candidates where one has a majority of the vote. The thing that kind of takes that extra time, as we saw this year, is the wait that is mandated by law before the Board of Elections can go and start opening and counting absentee ballots. There's legislation under consideration up in Albany. I believe it's passed the Senate, but I would have to double check on that. But there's legislation that that's being considered up in Albany to move that deadline up so that the boards of election can begin to count those absentee ballots even before election day, so that speeds up the reporting of those results. But as always, those unofficial tallies should be available right after the election. It'll take some time before, unless the law changes, before the absentee ballots are tallied and then those full results are available.
Perfect. Thank you.
So unfortunately, I guess I have to. I'm used to be the deputy chief of the Bronx Borough Board of Elections, so that time, the certification time is still going to be what the certification time is by law. So the additional count will any count before it's certified is unofficial. So, I'm just throwing that out there. I could not say it. It was just eating me up.
Understood. And I think there's the chance for certain that some of those rounds look different after those absentee ballots come in, which is why the point you raised is so important, right? That election night count is always the unofficial count. And it could be that, some of those absentee ballots make the difference between somebody making it into a second or third round or not. So it's an important thing to remember.
I think in terms of just keeping people, that it's a new process. So the more information we get is the more reliable, and to know those small nuances are important for a complete understanding that it does make a difference. And now it's not such a mystery. It's a new process. It's an unofficial number, and if you open ballots and you retabulate, it may look completely different.
That's right.
Yeah, and we want to, again, support our election systems as much as we can and support their reliability as much as we can. As we know, there's hundreds, thousands of New York City folks that make that happen. So, applaud the those folks that are working hard. It looks like we have a question in the chat, Chris.
Yep, one more hand raised that I see is George Torres.
Hey, how you doing? Good morning. I think you spoke to it a little bit, but I had 3 issues. I mean, my biggest concern is that ranked choice voting doesn't actually do anything to increase minority voter turnout. New York City has notoriously low numbers, and I don't see how this helps. And actually, you spoke saying that this doesn't disenfranchise voters, but I think it kind of does, and I think this is where you were speaking to it. What happens in the event that, I mean, I worked as a poll watcher before, and I've seen people come to the poll when you just had one choice to make and get very confused about that. How do you guarantee that somebody that votes in ranked choice, that vote or that ballot doesn't come unreadable because maybe in the third or fourth choice they duplicated the vote? Do we open up that ballot and say, well, they voted for this one as one, but 2 and 3 we do away with their votes, and then therefore only 4 and 5 are counted? Or is that whole ballot spoiled? Because I can see that if the whole ballot is spoiled, then you're actually taking away a vote from a New York City resident.
Okay. So those are all good questions. I'll try to address them in reverse order. So my understanding of the way that will work is like the ballot will be counted as long as you can count the vote, right? So you've got a good, the first choice is clear, the second choice is clear, and then the third choice has 2. Then I think I believe that is the point at which it gets spoiled, right? I know that training for poll workers is ongoing. I know that the Board of Elections plan is to have handouts at every poll site, making that kind of with similar kind of graphics, like showing voters what a good ballot looks like, showing voters what some of those pitfalls are to avoid. And so all of that, I think, is going to be really important to helping avoid some of those, potential mistakes that you raised. As for some of those other questions, like I think, like I don't want to argue, and I don't know that I hear many people argue that ranked choice voting is the solution to the turnout problem, right? Like we've still got to go out and talk to voters about why they need to vote, about why they need to care about their local government, about, helping people. Like, I think we all kind of live it every day. The majority of voters don't necessarily grasp, how making those choices about their local government relates to their everyday life. And so, like, those are the things that you need to explain to people to get their attention. I think once they're engaged, then it's really, really important to start giving them this information about how to make their vote count. As to kind of, does ranked choice voting help enfranchise communities of color and communities that are underrepresented? I think all you can really do is point to some of the results that have happened in other places where you're seeing candidates of color, candidates, more women are being elected under ranked choice voting than were elected under the old single choice systems. For voting, understand this has been a long year, a tough year for those of us who care about elections. And a lot of concerns as we went through last year about whether or not we'd have elections that were safe, secure, and that would represent the will of the voters. And so, I think I understand some of the concern and uncertainty around moving to a new system in New York City. Like the thing that I would leave people with is that, the experience that we've seen as it's been rolled out in those jurisdictions is that ranked choice does really provide for a better, clearer, more comprehensive representation of the will of the voters. And it has helped ensure that, the winners of elections are more representative of the people they serve. And I think we have work to do, as you say, in New York City to make sure that everybody understands the system and utilizes it the right way so that we get those results. But what we've seen in other places where it's been put into place is that that's what happens.
I have a follow-up too, and I wasn't quite sure. This has been employed or is going to be employed in special elections first. How does this work in the primaries versus the general election? And are we moving to sort of an open election system where party doesn't matter?
those are good questions, and so, I can't speak to whether or not this means we're going to go to kind of open elections. The way that I kind of understand the conversation around this from the charter revision, having ranked choice for the general election was considered, but the system that we have in New York around fusion voting makes that complicated for general elections. So, in a general election, you might have a candidate whose name appears 2 or more times on the ballot if they're running in the Democratic line and, let's say, the Working Families Party line. The folks who put the proposal together felt that could end up being really complicated for voters to piece through, right? And kind of, and having to work through, do I rank that same voter twice, and how do I do it? And so the choice was made there not to use it for general elections. I wouldn't say that I think that having ranked choice for the primaries means that the natural next step is kind of nonpartisan type elections, as you say. That's a question I think that it's been put to voters in New York City. Voters didn't want it. It's something that I know comes up now and again, but I don't see this as necessarily leading to nonpartisan elections.
Thank you.
All right, next hand that I see raised is Dr. Bruce Rivera.
Okay, just a point of clarification with respect to the question that was asked by my colleague, George Torres. When a ballot, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, if a ballot, someone fills out the ballot and it's not readable, the scanner will kick back or not accept that ballot, and hence the voter will then be issued another ballot at that particular time. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. So the scanners do provide a fail-safe there, right? If it is clearly, spoiled, to use the technical word, right? Let's say you've chosen 5 people as your first choice. The scanner should kick that back to the voter. That's absolutely right.
And the term is exhausted.
So exhausted is different, right? So an exhausted ballot is, so let's say you've ranked 5 candidates, and at the end of the process, the candidate who wins, or the candidates who are the last 2 candidates, are not candidates that are on your ballot, then your ballot is exhausted, right? So, again, let's say there are 9 candidates on the ballot for mayor, you've ranked 5. If we've gotten through all 5 of the candidates you chose, and none of them are left, then yes, the term is your ballot has been exhausted. Now, I understand there's some reaction to that, but if you think about that single choice election, the same thing happens if the candidate you voted for isn't the winner, right? Ranked choice gives your ballot more opportunities to count for that candidate who wins than if you can choose only one.
Thank you for the clarification.
Next hand I see is Robert Garmendiz.
Thank you. Couple questions. Are they going to be putting out PSAs with this? With a lot of PSAs?
Yes.
Okay.
The short answer is yes. In addition to what I've described, we have, some video resources that we're working on. There will be as we get closer to June, certainly there will be a kind of broad advertising campaign that we're running across the city to help familiarize voters with ranked choice voting. We're going to be doing some targeted work, here in the Bronx and in some of those other places where we have special elections in the months between now and June. But certainly, as we get close to that big citywide primary, there's going to be a lot of promotion to help voters understand how this works.
Good, because you should get on all the networks with this, and because it's this important. The information booklets coming from the Board of Election, are they coming out explaining this? because I just pity the people who are working the polls. Seriously.
Yep. Yep. Well, I know that the training of the poll workers is ongoing. Some of those resources will be available, at the poll site. In addition to the things that I've talked about, the voter guide that we prepare, both online and in print, will have a lot of detailed information about ranked choice voting. Look, I agree that the information is important. That interaction between voters and the poll workers at the poll site is really important. So making sure that they have the information they need to help voters through the process is I think a really, really important piece of this that I know that the BOE is focused on.
And finally, due to the pandemic, and it'll probably be here for good, the amount of people voting by mail. So they could be notified that, which I saw throughout the country, they notified them that there was something wrong with their ballots and stuff like that, and they would have to come in and make the correction. Is New York City considered doing anything like that?
So it feels like a question for the Board of Elections that I'm not sure that I can shed much light on. The one thing I'll just say that I think a lot of the experience we've had through 2020 has, one of the things we've learned is kind of the need to get out early, right? With early voting, with the majority, close to majority of voters voting by mail. It's really, really, really important to get this information out early enough so voters have it by the time they're ready to cast their votes. Because election day, I think we've kind of like opened up the bottle, and election day is no longer just one day. It's not going back there, and so we need to be really thoughtful about getting this information to folks timely.
We would have to end up, I guess, the state legislature would have to end up changing. So the voting or the city, early voting, early counting, as soon as the ballots come in, they can start counting, continuous counting. Not wait until after the election.
Call your state legislator.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris, do we have any other questions?
I do not see any additional hands raised at this time.
Okay. Awesome. That concludes our presentations for this month. At this time, we ask if there are any announcements that or statements that some of the agencies want to want to make. So if you do have an announcement, or if you're from an agency and would like to speak very briefly, we ask you to raise your hand. Mr. Gomendez, I can see that your hand is still raised.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Ignore it.
Well, we'll see what we can do.
Okay.
All right. That being said, raise your hand now so that Chris may acknowledge you, unmute you, and allow you to make your announcement. Any hands raised, Chris?
So far, no. Give it a few more seconds, I guess, but. Abigail Banks. Abigail, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, Abigail from Emergency Management. Just wanted to let everyone know that our applications for the 2021-2022 John D. Solomon Fellowship for Public Service was open this past Monday and will be open through March 30th. As a reminder, it's for 10 graduate students who are interested in emergency management. And it's a paid fellowship. So if anyone's interested, please let me know and I can forward that information over to you, or you can just hop on the emergency management website. Thank you.
Okay, that sounds promising. Any other hands?
No other hands.
So at this time, I want to thank everyone for their participation in today's joint meeting. We will take about a 5 to 7 minute break for technical issues. Our next meeting will be the public hearing on the mayor's budget. I saw something in the chat about not being able to raise his hand.
Yeah, so Belinda Simmons said, just wanted to let you know the NYC Commission on Human Rights is having a virtual resource fair. And then there's a link to a tweet in the chat.
Tonight at 6, from 6 to 8. So all of that all that information is in the chat for anyone who's interested here. And then, as I said, we will ask for your attention. We'll give everybody a bit of a 5 to 7 minute break. We want to make sure that we organize for the next part, which is the public hearing on the mayor's preliminary budget. Then yeah, stay on. I'm sorry if I implied otherwise. Stay on. Everyone stay on. But if you want to, reach very close to you and grab a snack, you could do that while we organize and get our hearing folks in line. And we'll be back in 5.
All right. Thank you, Deputy. And just for anyone who hears it go silent for the next few minutes, that's to be expected. You haven't been disconnected or anything. We will come back and you'll be able to hear everybody when we're ready to start.
All right. Thank you. Isn't technology grand? And neighborhood organizations and other parties to speak out on the mayor's proposed budget and capital and service needs of our community. And we're going to take verbal testimony, which will be limited to 3 minutes. Chris will be our timekeeper. He will mute you at 3 minutes. If you have not done so already, please forward your written testimony to bmccray at bronxbp.nyc.gov, and that's Betty B. McCray at bronxbp.nyc.gov. And you have until February 4th to do that. So at this time, Betty, do you have any additions to at this moment, or any additional statements?
No, that's it. None at all. No.
Thank you very much, Betty.
You're welcome.
As usual, succinct. And so at this point, if you are someone who has testimony or would like to make testimony in front of the board at this time, we'd like you to virtually raise your hand. And, to do so, it would be *9 if you're on the phone. And if you go into the functions on the Webex, you can raise your hand virtually. And please keep it raised until you're called. And Chris is going to tell me who the first person is.
All right. Let's see. So far, there are no hands raised, but I know Sydney Grant had reached out by email. So Sydney, I will start with you. There are a couple devices here, so I'm just going to unmute one and let's see if we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you. Who's on the line?
This is Sydney Grant, Dr. Dance, the founder and artistic director of Ballroom Basics USA. We have been communicating with Chris because in the past we present students when it's a live testimony. And so we spent quite a bit of time with creating very short clips of Bronx, of our Bronx work. And I just want to make absolutely certain that Miss Zoe, our council relations manager, who's been communicating with Chris, actually has that ready to show, because it really is it's the guts of our 3-minute testimony.
So that was the link you got, that you have, Chris, available?
Yeah. So the most recent link I got is a file that's on Google Drive that I can't access. But in terms of Zoe, I don't see that name in the attendee list. Is there any other?
She was communicating with you by phone.
Oh,
and phone and emails, Chris.
So we have the video that we can't share visually now, and we wanted to be able to send it out via the chat, the link, so everyone can see it. At this point, that the functionality of Webex will not allow us to share it.
Yeah. So what?
In the normal way, so to speak.
Right. So I have 3 links. There's a link to a video from a Pix 11 segment of another video on YouTube. And then the trimmed video is a Google Drive file that I cannot access because it would need to be shared with me. But I'm happy to put the links to the 2 videos that I am able to see in the chat so that people can view them.
So unfortunately, we won't be able to see it, but we'd love to have your testimony now.
Okay, so you got the hashtag Be Kind from Eyewitness News, and you got our holiday work from Van Nest Academy in Councilmember Janai's district. One video is approximately 2 minutes in length.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the combination of we just want to make sure that everything runs smoothly with the Webex meeting.
Please delete. Can you? I'm really sorry. Can you please delete? You should not have been sent the Pix 11 video. That's not from the Bronx. The video is a video for. I'll put the link in. I'm really sorry that was sent accidentally by Miss Zoe. The links. The story was done at a Bronx school, and this clip has no relevance for your constituents or the council members or community boards. And I'm not sure why it was sent to you, and I apologize.
That's okay. The chat nothing can be deleted, but that's okay. People can take those words into account. So the link is there. So Deputy, we've spent 3 minutes discussing video logistics, but how do you want to proceed?
Yes, I want to see if Mr. Grant would like to avail himself of the 3 minutes for testimony. Is that something you'd like right now?
I would, and I'll keep it very brief to say that, first of all, I applaud the borough and its hardworking members for everything that they've done during the COVID-19 crisis. My name is Grant. Schools and community boards and council offices know me as Dr. Dance. I'm the founder and executive artistic director of our arts and education nonprofit. I've met with many of you over the years to request and/or initiative funding for our vital work at Ballroom Basics USA. And for those who've met me, you know that I can speak pretty endlessly about the incredible impact on the social, emotional, and physical well-being of the school children we serve. As an organization headquartered in Councilmember Ayala's district that traverses Spanish Harlem and the South, we have a special affinity for Bronx students, having served over 5,000 constituent service school children in our more than decade-long history in New York City. And as I'm sure you're all aware, the impact that COVID-19 has had on students and families has been devastating. The amount of isolation and anxiety and loss and disconnect that students and families have experienced has been immense. When and if those who are joining today watch the links we've sent, you will see how we've been able to keep children and families uniquely and energetically engaged during the COVID-19 crisis. And quite frankly, as we look toward the not too distant horizon and are able to return to a sense of normalcy, the fact that our work so uniquely connects children after so much disconnect will be more valuable than ever before. So we ask for the discretionary initiative and delegation support of the Bronx Borough and the council members. And I thank you for your time and wish everybody hope and healing as we continue to avert crisis and chaos in our country and our city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you, Mr. Grant. Our next individual with their hands up. Do we have anyone else, Chris?
Not at the moment, but we do have a few other attendees who may be here for that purpose. So just again, if you're in Webex software, in the participant list, you should see an option next to your name to click to virtually raise your hand. And if you are on the phone, you can hit *9 to virtually raise your hand. So if anyone else here wants to do that, please do so now.
Excuse me, Madam Deputy.
Yes.
I believe that Nancy Rosario wishes to make a presentation. She was initially part of the panel and she was listed on the attendee list, but now she's not there. So
Okay.
I know she wanted to speak.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I saw her name in both places at various points, but Nancy, I've added you back here, so you are able to unmute your line and speak now if you'd like to. Nancy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just on another Zoom call with Brooklyn. So I'll be back unless Joe Russo is on the line, the chairperson, and he can speak.
I do not see Joe. He was here earlier, but I do not see him connected at this time.
Okay. Anyone else? Again, we just want everyone to go. If you do want to raise your hand, you go to the participant list and then raise your hand there. That's the best way for us to form a line or in terms of who needs to speak. But actually, if you just want to unmute yourself at this point and just jump on in, we'll sort it out.
Okay, so what I'll do is just pretty much add everybody who's in the attendee list as a panelist, which will give them that ability. Maggie Greenfield, I see your hand raised now. Go ahead, you can unmute yourself. Nope. Maggie, did you want to speak? I see you're unmuted, but we don't hear you yet.
So I don't hear, but I just want to also let everyone know that, if you are having some trouble here and you're not getting through, as we said, we've had some WebEx issues that you do have an opportunity to forward your written testimony to B. McCray, BMCCRAY at Bronx bp.nyc.gov. We may just have to move on to the next person, and if we do not get to everyone, although I hope we do, please make sure that we go ahead and in fact, Chris, can you put that in in the chat? B. McCray at bronxbp.nyc.gov, so that everyone who can see the chat can also send their
sure.
written testimony.
Sure. One second, I'll drop that in there.
Sure. as we allow for you to do that and take a little more time, that'll give anyone who's considering testimony, again, yet another chance to go to the participant list and raise your hand, and
Can you hear me
you'll
now?
be acknowledged. Okay, we have Maggie now.
Oh, good.
Greenfields. Okay, we can hear you now.
Oh, great. Hello, everyone. I don't know if there's a way for me to enable my video. Let's see. Oh, there I am. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie Greenfield. So I'm the Executive Director of the Bronx River Alliance. I'm on the right place in the agenda. This is a comment for the preliminary budget. Is that appropriate right now? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Great. The Bronx River Alliance is a public-private partnership. I think probably most folks are aware. We're celebrating our 20th year anniversary in 2021, so we're very excited about that, and pleased to kind of take stock of our progress over that time, the 20 years we've been around. We've created over 20 new acres of waterfront parkland in the South Bronx where it's really needed. And we've managed to raise over $225 million for capital projects along the Bronx River. The goal being really to transform the river from what was once an abandoned dumping ground into a real asset for our communities. And we grew out of community activism for the river. And it's all about, making the river a healthy resource for the communities through which it flows. So a lot's happened. We've planted over 130,000 native plants, where we've moved over 675 tons of garbage, everything you can imagine, cars, safes, shopping carts, just anything you can think of, we pulled out of that river. We've engaged 20,000 volunteers in the effort, and together they've donated a total of 120,000 hours to the work on the river. So it's our staff, but much more than our staff, it's all the volunteers who give their sweat equity into this river. And yet, we created these beautiful new parks like Concrete Plant Park, Starlight Park, Hunts Point Riverside Park, and yet we struggle with the day-to-day maintenance and operations of our parks, as does every park in this borough, as you know. And we saw huge cuts to the park's budget last year in the midst of COVID. We saw a 14% budget cut to the Parks Department overall, which totaled $84 million that was taken out of parks at a time when parks were being used more than ever before because everything else was closed, right? So where did you go? You went to your park. And we couldn't keep up. The Parks Department could not keep up. There are close partners in this effort. The workforce was reduced by 1,700 people from 2019 to 2020. So you can imagine it just was an impossible feat to try to tell people to keep the parks clean and welcoming and accessible for people at a time when we were seeing that kind of budget cut coupled with extremely high park usage. And so, that's just, I think the big thing everyone saw last year in the parks was the trash, right? Everyone saw the garbage piling up. And we need, I think we just know we need more staff to be able to meet the demand that our city has for its parks, including the parks along the Bronx River. The Bronx River is called District 14 in New York City Parks Department. It's the District 14 Maintenance District. We really need to have 3 supervisors, for example, for this district, because it's a long, skinny corridor. It goes from Muskrat Cove and Shoelace Park up there near the Deputy Borough President's neighborhood, down to Soundview Park, Hunts Point, where it empties out into the East River. So it's a long, skinny corridor. We really need to have a kind of northern park district and a southern park district so we can deploy people and they can spread out from those areas. And we have not ever been able to achieve that. And that's just one example of why we need increased resources for our parks through the public sector. So Bronx River Alliance, we work to raise private resources for our parks, and we've done a pretty good job of that. We are not able to raise the kind of maintenance dollars that might supplement what really is a public responsibility to keep our parks clean. So I just hope that that's just my 2 cents. I'm here to kind of plug Parks Department as you all consider the city budget and really look to restore the Parks Department budget back to the pre-COVID levels at least. I think there's a strong argument to say that that was not even adequate, but certainly a 14% budget cut that we saw last year just left our parks really high and dry when we needed them most. Thank you.
Thank you. Just if are there any other hands up?
No, there are not at this time. And yeah, we went a little over 3 minutes there, but with nobody else's hand up.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would just say if anyone else had wanted to speak but had an issue with the virtual hand raising or anything, everyone who's connected at this point has the ability to unmute themselves. So that would be just sort of like a last call, I think, if you wanted to speak.
Okay, Mr. McShane, I had my hand raised. I don't know if you could have seen me. I think I raised my hand. It's in the, but again, as I said, I don't know if it's my connection or not.
Yeah, no, it's raised now, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to, first of all, wish Ms. Greenfield well, as I said. So, like I said, my name is Dr. Michael Burke, Chairman of Community Board 12. And so right now they have a project that is ongoing in regards to Shoelace Park and the refurbishment of the old Bronx River Parkway, which is ongoing right now. And I must say it absolutely looks fantastic. Madam Deputy, as I said, as a resident of this neighborhood, that is a treasure that we have in this particular neighborhood. And so we would like to thank the Bronx River Alliance for initiating that, as well as the Parks Committee and Deputy Commissioner, Commissioner Rosa with her work. So if I could piggyback on what Mrs. Greenfield said, if there are more, and again, I know every community board would like resources for that, but I think that, you know, the Bronx River is the only fresh river in the entire city. And so I think when you look at the wildlife that you can see that's coming through the Bronx River in Shoelace Park, and I'd like to thank Ms. Greenfield and her team for the magnificent work that they've done in restoring those wetlands. What we would need to see in that park, not only is the old Bronx River bed being restored, but also if we could have further resources for that particular park, Madam Deputy. And so if that's something that you could pass on to the borough president, it would be deeply appreciated. And again, on behalf of the residents of Community Board 12, I'm certain that they would agree with me in that assessment. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. Thank you, as always, for your advocacy on these Community Board 12 issues, as well as the Bronx River issues. I only feel slightly on the spot after that comment, but it's okay, because we always want to we advocate for our parks, and we always want to advocate for the Bronx River. So thank you for that comment. Do we have any other?
Yeah, so just George Torres. So yeah, as we were going through, I was looking at the attendees, but we had George raised his hand as well. George, did you have something?
Yes, this was unplanned, but I would be remiss if I didn't raise it on behalf of the community boards. Our budgets were cut as well. We've been having, as district managers, conversations in regards to this, and a very excellent point was raised by my colleague at CB11 and CB9, that every year we give back, I don't want to say millions of dollars, but we give back hundreds of thousands of dollars because of monies that are unspent by the community boards. Some of us have tried very hard to minimize giving that money back. But in light of the fact that we are taking additional cuts on top of the give back, I think, is extraordinary, and more, especially in light of the fact that we have very finite budgets. So if the borough president's office can make an effort or speak to this in their budget priority list on the preliminary budget, especially a restoration of the baseline to what it was when we first, before this whole pandemic hit, that would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, George, for that comment. I'll just invite Betty back to unmute. If you could just give the I guess timeline, or just really just how this budget process works. Just a real quick review of that, because we know this meeting is a public hearing regarding the mayor's preliminary budget, and as much information as you can add to the role that this will play in the ultimate issuance of the budget with the city council. If you could just speak to that. Betty, are you there? I don't know if I could say that again. So.
Sorry. I didn't realize that you called my name. I apologize. What usually happens is what we try to do is try to get whatever needs the community may have. We ask people to send in requests for capital funding, because basically the borough president strictly has capital funding. So we ask the community to send us requests, be it schools, community organizations, hospitals, cultural institutions, anything that you may think that may be needed in your community. We ask that you guys send it to us with time, so that way when we meet, we can vet out those projects and see what can and what cannot actually be funded, and try to submit that to OMB for consideration for whatever monies the mayor gives to our office to distribute throughout the entire borough. This year, well, last year we got a cut ourselves, so a lot of stuff had to be deducted from that when the pandemic hit. So it was a lot of projects that we had to cut last year. But this year, we're going about it the way that we would normally go about it, because that's the instructions that we actually got from the Office of Management and Budget. So just go by the normal process of submitting our requests to them, so they can fund the organizations that the board would like to consider. And we usually submit our report to the mayor's office, hoping that some changes will come. The big that we usually do on a budget, in his preliminary budget. So that's submitted sometime in March to him, and hopefully some changes will come through that. So that's what we're working on. But if you have any questions, everybody has my email. Quite sure I put it in the chat. You can always just email me. And if you have any requests for funding, you can send that to me as well. Although we're trying to dwindle that down, because we had a deadline on when to submit those things, which is usually on Martin Luther King Day. So, but we're still looking at some of them, and trying to finalize those lists. Okay.
Okay, thank you. That's exactly what I was asking for. Thank you very much. Okay. And if we don't have any other testimonies in line, I just want to reiterate the point that you can still submit your written testimony to the email that's in the chat. Everyone should have access to that. If you are on the phone, it is again bmccrae@bronxbp.nyc.gov. And if we do not have any more testimonies, we will end this budget hearing.
All right. Thank you, Deputy. I do not see any other hands raised.
I again thank everyone for their participation. This is a wonderful opportunity for the communities to speak to all of us who need to hear what you support, and we thank you, and we'll see you next year.
All right. Just